came in, and I know you know this, who remembers what the word Eucharist means? Michael, do you remember what?
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, right. So when we come up to the table to receive Eucharist, we're coming for a Thanksgiving meal. And what do we eat? What do we eat? Bread and wine. And what is that bread and wine really? Andy? Where's Andy? What's the bread and wine that we eat?
Oh, Jesus.
Jesus. That's right. We have a Thanksgiving meal and we have Jesus. Now last week when I said that to the church school kids, Andy said, "Oh, that's gross." And I sort of understand where he's coming from. But the truth of the matter is, when we have Jesus in our Thanksgiving meal, our Eucharist is a very, very special time. And we might want to talk about what exactly we mean when we say we eat the body and blood of Jesus. What do we mean when we say we eat the body and blood of Jesus? Well, what we mean is that in some way, something happens so that that bread and wine is not just plain bread and wine for us. In some way, Jesus is really there. And what I said to the kids this morning in church school is the same way we take our vitamins to make our bodies big and strong, we have Jesus at Thanksgiving, at the Eucharist, because Jesus makes us strong. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of theological language that you can use on your friends at some point, so bear with me. There's more than one theological view about what actually happens in the Eucharist. How many of you were raised Catholic? Okay, a number of you were raised Catholic. And if you were raised Catholic, you know that Catholics strongly believe that something happens called transubstantiation. Did you ever hear that word? And that means that the bread and wine looks like bread and wine, but the bread and wine aren't really there anymore. It really is the flesh and blood of Jesus. And if you don't get that, you shouldn't be taking communion. And I don't mean to be putting down anybody's theological views. I'm exaggerating a little bit to make a point. But it's a very specific view about what happens. Now, Episcopalians in the Anglican tradition are not quite as rigid about what we say happens in the community, in the presence of the Eucharist. But what we do believe is that Jesus is really there somehow. And one of the practical ways this bears out, and if you're on the altar build, you know this, is that when we're done with the consecrated elements, we don't throw them away. We don't pour the wine back in the bottle to use it over again, because it's not just wine anymore. We don't throw the bread away, because it's not just bread anymore. So we either consume it, and you'll see Josh and me up at the front consuming the elements at the end of the service sometimes. That's called doing the ablutions. In other words, we're cleaning up. In a way, we're doing the dishes, cleaning up the leftovers. Some Christians believe that the body and blood, the bread and wine aren't really changed. They just have a spiritual effect on you when you eat them. So that there's nothing changed about the bread and wine. So if you believe that, there wouldn't be harm in pouring the wine back in the bottle, right? Because it's just wine. It's only when you eat it you have a spiritual effect. And some Christians believe something called receptionism, and that is that as long as the bread and wine are out here, they're not changed. But when they enter your body, they're changed. So when you receive them, they're changed. So those two positions are similar, but there's a slight difference. Are you ever going to need to know this? I don't know, but hopefully it'll give you a better understanding of what's happening when we're up here. All right, I said this to the kids too. Why do we do this every Sunday? Do any of the kids remember two of the reasons we do this every Sunday? We already mentioned one of them. Do you remember? You don't remember? Michael?
Because Jesus asked us.
Exactly right, because Jesus asked us to. And next week we'll talk about the special prayer that we say that remembers what Jesus asked us to. But at the Last Supper, on the night before Jesus was crucified, Jesus said, whenever you eat this bread and drink this wine, do this to remember me. And I want you to do this to remember me. And what's the second reason we talked about? I already mentioned it once this morning. Do you remember what the second reason is? What's it do for us? Like our vitamins. Makes us strong. So we come to the Eucharist to be strengthened. In my sermon, I talked about our life of faith and our journey of faith. We don't often think of it in those kind of flowery terms, but we're always traveling down the road God, Jesus is with us in a really special way to give us strength for the journey. And that's why in our church, in our tradition, we receive the Eucharist every single week. So we have that kind of strength for the journey. Does anybody have any questions? I continue to hold out my offer that if you have questions that come up during the week, or if you ever think of any questions that have anything to do with the Eucharist, please email me or write them down or call the office, and we'll try to get to them